Good afternoon, friends. Very warm welcome on behalf of the IIA Women's Circle of Bombay Chapter. Today we have a very distinguished speaker with us, Mrs. Nandita Parekh. Nandita Bain, as we fondly call her, is a dear friend and mentor. She is a part of the profession since over 3 decades now. Nandita Bain holds the distinction of being the first woman to top the final CA examination and gold medalist. She has done MBA from USA and worked with Coopers & Lybrand in their Chicago office. She is a former partner of CNK and Associates LLP, and prior to that, led the audit and consulting practices of AJ Shah & Company. Many of you must have heard her on BCA's and ICI platform on topic such as practice management, risk management, innovations in internal audit, corporate governance, and internal controls over financial reporting. She has also authored a book on ICFR, a handbook for private companies and their auditors, which was published by BCS in August 2016. She has done pioneering work in pursuing the cause of women chartered accountants in sensitizing the profession about the need for better work-life balance, and has supported many women professionals in restarting their professional careers. Presently, she co-chairs Internal Audit Committee of BCS. She has been instrumental in designing internal audit studies, a long-duration study course on internal audit conducted by BCS. An academician at heart, a great storyteller, and actively engaged in mentoring young professionals. So over to you, Nanda.
Thank you so much, Nehal, for such fine words. I really miss you even more now. I've had the pleasure of working with Nehal for a long time. This is perhaps a rare occasion where I'm speaking on a subject which does not require technical competence. So in a way, it is my comfort zone because I've retired from active practice since 1st January 2020. And the year that followed has given me a lot of time to introspect and also admire what the profession has taught me, acknowledge very gratefully what the profession has made me. So what I'm really going to share with all of you is the things that I learned along the way, which at the end of my career appear to be the most important things that have been left behind. Let me start with sharing my presentation, and I will take you along a short journey of my 30 years captured in 25 slides, because that really is the essence. So should I share the screen now? Is the screen visible?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So, you know, when Nehal asked me in September, October, that would you take a session for the Women's Forum, I was delighted because it combined two very important parts of my life, women professionals and internal audit. So why would I miss this opportunity? But as the day came closer, I started thinking as to what can I talk about? And at my age and stage in life, what is it that I can really share which would be meaningful? With a lot of introspection and with a desire to share, because every time when I've shared my story or shared my experience with a small or large audience, I have seen nods there saying me too in a nice way. So, you know, it is with this idea that I started thinking. I'm very grateful to IIA because not only they invited me, they also gave me the liberty to choose the title. Believe me, choosing the title took its own time, but when it started, I thought that yes, this is one thing I would really like to talk about. A little bit of how the topic came about. Almost a decade back, I came across this beautiful book called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. When I read the book, I didn't realize the significance of the title, The Last Lecture, before I read the book. But as I read and as I went through the experience of my son studying in a US university, I realized that this last lecture is such a fine concept. It is a tradition followed in many US universities where, as part of the graduation closure, the students select a professor. It's a student selected professor who is asked to come and address the class, the graduating class, and their friends and their parents who have come there for graduation on one line summarization that if this was to be your last lecture, what is it that you would like to talk about? And this is what got me thinking that, you know, one day it will be our last lecture, and one day it will be our last day at work, and one day we will summarize, look back at life. What is it that we'd really like to share? And if that is what we keep in perspective, I think our journey will be so much more focused, so much more directional, and so much more positive. So it is with this idea. I'm not guaranteeing that this is my last lecture, but I'm speaking as if this could be my last lecture. What is it that on the subject of internal audit, what is it that I would like to share? It was interesting, and this is also what I would like to share, that the last lecture is not necessarily given by a gray-haired aging professor. Very often people who are invited to speak at the last lecture are younger professors, professors who have brought a different kind of energy and life to the classroom, professors who stand as inspirations and admiration. So I am not saying that I fit into that class. I am only saying that I've taken the pains to color my hair before this session so that people don't consider that the last lecture is only given by older people. So with this honest admission, let me start that what did I think about? And when I started talking about the topic, I said, this is really what I would like to share. These are some of the things which I picked up along the way. But I wish when I was a little younger, when I was growing as a professional, somebody had actually sat down and shared these attributes with me in a detailed way, with stories, with anecdotes, with specific examples. So this is really my offering, as if it is my last lecture on the subject of internal audit. And I feel that there are 4 qualities which have really stayed with me, which I feel make the base for excellence in internal audit. The first one is fairness. Second one I'd like to talk about is frankness, then friendliness, and finally finesse. It is not a coincidence that the attributes all start with F, and that is the organizers, the feminine energy is what I would really like to bring, but this session is about all. And I must say that a lot of these attributes which I speak about, I have learned from men and women alike who have walked with me as seniors, as colleagues, as co-professionals, as students on my journey as internal auditor. So this session is for all. It is not a gender specific session, but being who I am, if you find that there is a little bit of a tug towards the women, please bear with me. If all of us stand for something, and this is something I very strongly stand for. So let us talk about fairness and what is really meant by fairness. So the first image that comes into mind is fair and lovely, but that is not what I'm talking about. So what happens is that many of us are chartered accountants and we are used to numbers, we are used to verifying facts, we are used to examining accuracy. So if you ask me, true and correct is easy to establish because most often true and correct is a matter of white and black. But when we talk of true and fair, it is not a matter of white and black. It is always a mix. It is always on there in life as an internal audit, when one has to give an opinion, when one has to observe, when one has to present, it is true and fair which is really required, because facts can be presented in n number of ways and data can be interpreted in so many ways. Intentions can be viewed in many ways and outcomes can also be analyzed differently. It is an unbiased auditor who will be able to make sense of the facts, the data, the apparent story, the real story, the intentions, the outcomes, the external failures, and the internal intentions. When we combine all this, and what we present becomes a fair view. And according to me, what distinguishes an internal auditor from an exceptional internal auditor is whether the focus is on true and correct, or whether there has been a lot of effort made in making sure that it is not just true and correct, but fair in every which way. So fairness is a quality which I learned, and as promised, I think I should tell a story. So I remember a time, and some of you may have heard this story from me. It's very unique. It's my personal story. So I was a very young auditor, auditing the foreign exchange business and some other businesses of a very large public sector bank at that time. I had friends that time who were qualified with me, who had started working with multinational banks. That was the time when multinational banks were spreading their wings in India. And in a conversation with these professionals who were now working with multinational banks, a conversation came up. And this colleague of mine said that public sector banks will never be as profitable as us multinational banks because we have such a strong focus on our objectives and our profits. And he gave an example that, you know, the RBI requires certain amount of lending to be to the priority sector. So the priority sector lending at that time was measured on 2 days, 30th September and 31st March. So the bank's balance sheet on 30th September and 31st March necessarily had to have a certain percentage allocated to what was priority sectors. And he said then, this my friend, that, you know, export finance comes in that category. And very often export finance is required for 90 days, 120 days. So these public sector banks actually lend during October, something which would be wound down by January, February. So look at this, it will not come in their September position, it will not come in their March position, and they would still do such suboptimal lending. Now, armed with this, I thought that what a find, and I go to this public sector bank and I actually see that there is a lot of export credit of this category. Somewhere within me, because I was young, because I had a tradition in the firm where I had done my articles and where I was groomed, that before you jump to a conclusion, ask. So I sought a meeting with the general manager at that time and said, sir, I want to discuss a very important point, important audit query. And I put these facts before the gentleman. The gentleman brushed me off and said that if you really want to know, come when you have 45 minutes, 1 hour of time, and I will explain. What he explained to me has stayed with me now. And he says, I don't know what is the objective of the multinational banks, but we as public sector banks exist not to manage our balance sheets on 30th September and or 31st March, but to partner the economic growth and economic agenda of this country. Now, if you find that what we are doing doesn't match with that agenda or that objective, please put it as a query. At that point, I realized that to be fair, if you don't understand the purpose, the driving force of an organization, you will never be able to do fair audit. After that, whenever I thought that I have come across a very big audit observation, or we as a team have found something which is exceptional or outrageous, we have had the courtesy of going and checking that why is this way? Am I missing something? And believe me, many of those exceptional, outrageous observations have folded down when we understood the purpose and the rationale. So true and fairness is looking at the objective and then judging the action, not looking at the action, presuming the objective and then reporting. So when I looked at fairness, what are similar words? Equity, justice, impartiality, integrity, honesty, fair-mindedness, uprightness. So when I see the word fairness, it combines a lot of things. But if I have to say it in simple words, I would say fairness is treating the other as you would like to be treated in identical position. So when that criteria is met, we become fair in what we say, how we say, when we say, and what solutions we provide. So as internal auditors, because that is really the forum I'm speaking to, where do we exercise fairness? And it is not just in reporting. It is not only qua our auditee. It is also at every stage in how we conduct ourselves. Because being fair is a process that gets integrated into the way we work. In terms of audit planning, in terms of audit timing, in terms of dealing with audit findings, how do we draft the report? How do we do audit rating wherever we are doing audit rating? And I will take you through some examples. So first is, when one of our clients used to have several branches, and one branch was at Goa. And the Goa branch manager once said that it is my fault that my branch is in Goa, because no matter what, my branch every year gets audited. So sometimes we include in our audit sample, particularly when it comes to visiting, particularly when it comes to making a choice, that which is attractive, that which is convenient, that which is easier. And that is why if there is a difficult or a tough auditee, sometimes those areas get less audited because we want the easy way out. So when we plan the audit, we need to be fair. We say, what would the organization like to be audited, and let us fit our plan to that. Yes, we've come a long way. There are more scientific ways of doing audit planning, but there is always that little bit of subjectiveness that comes in. Let us make sure that it is not driven by our priorities, but it is driven by the priorities of the organization to whom we are serving through internal audit. Now we have an audit calendar and an audit plan, which is for a which is normally available for a year. What does it take for us to inquire as to what could be a convenient time for a particular department or a division or unit to be audited? I have seen very often that when we don't take this care, we end up being in a unit for audit when it is the worst possible time for them to offer any cooperation or any flow of information. It is the time when there is a local festival, when a lot of people are on leave, or when there are deadlines to be met, or there is a certain annual processes to be done. So I think when we want to be fair, when we want a lot to be achieved in an effective, efficient manner, keep taking into consideration the convenience of the other is a fair way to go about. Of course, there are times when audit cannot wait, and I'm not saying that in those times also we need to, but in most cases we would know the cycles and we can gear our audit plans for that. Now let us go one step further. And these are examples where I am also guilty, because I would just take the first example. There are 10 cases of deviation in the timeline for raising goods receipt notes, ranging from 1 to 182 days. Now, when I look at this, there is a certain impression when I hear this, when I read this, is created. Now, if the reality is that in 9 cases, the delay is only 1 day, and in one case, there is a delay of 182 days, it is not a material item, and it is clearly by oversight and not by intention. Is it fair to say that the delay ranges from 1 to 182 days? Which kind of average, which kind of reporting parameter should I use? Should I be using average? Should I be using median? Should I be eliminating the outliers, or should I be highlighting the outliers? That is where the fairness comes into play. Because very often when we present a report, particularly to the audit committee, the primary auditee is not even present. And that is why we can walk away without strong opposition, but that doesn't mean that we have a right to be unfair. So in the manner in which we present our findings, certain opinion about the auditee gets created in the minds of those who are listening to us. we have an obligation that we create the right impression, and we focus only on the process and control weakness and not on individuals or the departments. That would be an unfair way of presenting. When we report weaknesses in controls, there are standard operating procedures. 2 steps have been missed out in certain conditions. We specify that these 2 controls have not been implemented or not been exercised. But if the auditee has taken pains to exercise certain alternative controls during that time, is it not our obligation to mention that and then examine whether we even have a valid observation to start with? So these are some of the things in which, in our excitement and young exuberance, we report that which is technically correct and that which raises eyebrows, but perhaps that which does not create long-term goodwill for us, where we are no longer considered to be fair and objective. So let us all work towards being fair, where we arrive at conclusions based on available data. So here there are data deficiency, and I have this one favorite phrase that, we should leave all our jumping and skipping to the gym or to the exercise room. When we are doing audit, we should walk slowly to a conclusion with lot of corroboration. Never jump to a conclusion. That is not what we are required to do. And the same way, when we are gathering data, let us not be in a hurry. Look at evidence in a holistic manner, gather whatever is necessary, and hence come to a conclusion or present something which is fair, which is well reasoned, and which is collaborated. When we present, we discussed about that, finding at a forum where audit is not present, we carry that additional responsibility of speaking on behalf of the auditee as well, or presenting the counter view in a balanced way. A lot of people don't do this. Where the bottleneck is at the top, but we keep assigning the responsibility with the HOD, because HOD is our easier punching bag, let us be honest. So there is an IT system which needs overhauled. With a new IT system, a lot of processes and controls would get established. The HOD has been asking for budget for last 2 years. The budget is not getting sanctioned. And the same comment keeps repeating that the IT systems are inadequate. Now, this is where we need to be able to identify the cause and be able to assign it to the level at which it is most appropriate. We, in our many decades of practice, developed where we started segregating the observation based on management framework separately from the operational issue, because in almost every audit that we did, there were some bottlenecks at the senior management level which were beyond the control of the unit or the function that we were auditing. And hence it became easier and healthier to get the right kind of responses and feedback from the auditee. And final, and this I found most difficult, that it is very easy for us to make a judgment and say, your organization works without updated SOPs. You need to digitize, you need to automate. There is not enough attention given. This is a time when I would say, look backwards, look internally, look within. If we feel that these are very good practices, why are we not implementing it ourselves? And this is one question every time that I have asked, I have contributed to making our own organization, our own unit stronger. So this is also what we say, that when you walk the talk, the strength in your talk is very different than when you only talk the talk but walk a different way. So this is something which I have learned, and I have also understood that these are things which make us more acceptable to the auditing. We come across as a team which will present a balanced view in the larger interest of the organization. So there are times when we come to a client or an auditee where we have had a lot of disagreements, we have had a lot of arguments, but our satisfaction comes when for certain critical decisions, that very person reaches out and said that, well, I have my differences, but I know that when I ask you something, you will give me fair advice. You will give me advice which is genuine, which is authentic. You will tell me what you don't know, and you will not misguide me. So these are the ways in which one gets rewarded when one is fair. Also, one of the things which I have learned is that nobody likes surprises. So if there is something very important that you are going to bring up at a larger forum, I think courtesy demands that you have at least discussed it, maybe not in the exact form, but in substance, and heard out if there is a view which merits consideration before you put it. So one of the ways in which I found that fairness can be exercised is whenever we do an audit, and suppose we do rating. It is like in the school or college years, when we get a grade B+, B+ doesn't tell us anything, or it doesn't bring about a difference. But if somebody tells us that these are the 3 things that you need to do to move from the B's to the A's, to inch up from a B+ to an A-, A or A+, it creates that kind of positive motivation for me, because not only do I know where I want to reach, I also know the way to reach there. So I always ask when we complete an audit that where do I rate, whether rating is required in terms of the quality of controls. Where do I rate this particular audit or particular unit or particular area? And what are the 2 or 3 most significant things that the auditee can do to improve the rating? If we have this clarity and if we bring this in our conversations, I think we would become significantly more acceptable to the organization whom we wish to serve. That brings me to the next attribute, the attribute of frankness. But before that, why I like the word fairness, that being objective is not always, fully objective is not always possible. We all are humans. We come with our known and unknown biases, our background, our certain presumptions. But when we bring a fairness angle, the chances are that we will inch closer to being more and more objective. So this is something which we need to understand. I think one of the primary standards or the attributes is being independent and being objective. I think fairness falls in that category. So now we go to the second one, in being frank. Now this is a very simple picture, and I like to use pictures because very often when I've attended long sessions, I've very often forgotten the content, but I've remembered the stories and I've remembered the pictures. So here on top, and many of you would recognize that this is Pinocchio, and he is asking a question. Let us see what is the question that he is asking the internal auditor. He says, what do you notice? And you are the internal auditor. You are sitting there and you answer. What would you answer? And you answer, well, you have lovely eyes. True and correct, but is it frank? Did you miss the long nose? Or was it uncomfortable talking about it? Or you wanted to only please the person who's asking you the questions? This is something which we need to say, that, being honest, being true, doesn't always mean that you are frank. There was a very nice blog of Richard Chambers which I read, which says, if you see something, say something. And this is the onerous responsibility on internal audit. Internal audit of a client who were in the diamond industry, making jewelry, mid-sized company, manufacturing. Now, always when as outsourced auditors, when you deal with a client, on one hand, you are deciding your scope and your fees. And at that time, the CEO very nicely explained that, look here, we are largely a processing company. What we really earn is for our labor, which is a 10 to 15% if we are lucky of our turnover. So don't look at our turnover when you are looking at our size and our capacity to pay, which is not how the internal audit fee should be decided in any case. But this is how I was explained. When you look at our capacity to pay, please understand that we are basically working on the labor arbitrage, and our turnover should have been the margin that we make on our gross sale minus the product cost, and that is where the essence of the business is. Now, this very same person invited us for inauguration of a very fancy office which had a lot of opulence with the best of the designers, so many artifacts, etc. And the person then asked that, how did you like our office? And at that point, the previous conversation had not gone away from my mind. So all that I could say is that your office seems to be that your business should be judged based on your turnover and not based on your margin. And I don't know, because for a business where working capital finance is a struggle, where does the finance for such a large ownership office done to such opulence come from? Believe me, I don't know whether the gentleman appreciated it at that point or not. But I know that for this one courage to make this one statement, he remembered us for a long, long time. And we continued having a very healthy, large, vibrant or professional association. When areas that are expected to raise concerns are left out from audit scope or from discussions, now there are difficult discussions. There are very powerful people in the organization whom you have had a chance to audit, and you need to take up certain issues at the audit committee. And as it often happens, the audit committee gives you a limited time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. If you choose to speak about the easier subjects and the easier audits and request that the other reports may be taken as read and that the audit committee may send in questions if any, you are shying away from the requirement to be frank, to be able to take to the audit committee those issues which matter the most to the organization, which would be most difficult to address and which would possibly require a longer senior level time to be invested in being understood by the organization, is something that we need to have the courage to do. So frankness is a result of being objective, seeing the larger picture, as I explained, putting the interest of the organization before all other interpersonal equations or job engagement security. The picture there, an internal auditor can operate best if he or she has the courage to walk around with a resignation in her purse or his pocket. So this is something which I have always believed in, that if you get afraid of losing your engagement or your job, you're not perhaps fit to be an internal auditor, because being an internal auditor requires you to also put your own job security as a far lower priority compared to the larger organizational good. I would also go to the extent of saying that if you are, like me, an outsourced internal audit service provider, and in a span of a decade, you have never lost an engagement, because being frank, being honest, being able to discuss uncomfortable things, then maybe you need to still go up the frankness ladder. So this is what I would like to leave, that 100% retention of clients in internal audit is rare, and it should never be because you have compromised on being frank and being honest. And what are the challenges? As we say, that in where we have found the most greatest challenge in being frank is when we had to talk about certain related party transactions, when we had to talk about the appraisal process and outcomes, certain persons who work in the interest of the organization getting sidelined, and certain persons who only invest on getting the popularity mandate getting promoted. Incentive system and its misuse. I will give one small example. There was a time when service tax had to be paid. There was a service tax which has now been replaced by GST, had to be paid before the month end or within a very short period after the month end, which required that everything that you book as an invoice, you need to pay a certain percentage of it to tax, and hence the finance team has to create that liquidity. Now, there were incentives which worked for the marketing team or for the business team on a quarter end basis. We found that, in trying to get those incentives in the quarter, there was so much pressure and so much got concluded in the last 5 days of the quarter that it put all the calculations of the liquidity requirement, the tax payment requirement, the cash flow, the finance team go really under a lot of stress. We also found that in that hurry to put the transaction into the billing into the previous month, the billing remained open for a few days. Now, this was something where we thought that the incentive system is actually causing a certain disturbance in the rest of the organization. Came up with 2 suggestions, that the quarters for incentive may not match with the quarters for service tax. So you are taking the load off and you are diffusing. Or for the incentive system, the cutoff should be taken as 5th of the next month of the quarter, first month of the next quarter, so that the load that is there of putting in the billing between 27th to 30th is shifted to the next quarter. Well, the suggestions were considered and one of them was actually implemented, creating a win-win. So these are some of the things that we need to consider, we need to balance, we need to be fair, and we need to bring out a solution. IT system weaknesses have been a major reason, because very often we have found that the HODs work with a certain amount of trust, and they don't always understand the IT system so fully. They also rely on certain support from the IT system or certain alerts. So these are areas where we have found a lot of gaps, and they have been very difficult to address because it would directly impact the reporting on ICFR adequacy. So just to give some examples, sometimes the rights for altering vendor masters, including the destination payment accounts, have been kept open to an audience much wider than what ought to have been promoted according to the RCMs or the control matrices. Whistleblower policy rollout. When an organization stated in the audit committee that yes, we have whistleblower policy, it required exceptional courage to bring out when we audited the whistleblower policy to say that, sir, 4 of the senior members of the organization, which is the head of compliance, the head of an operating unit, and the number 2 or number 3 person in the accounts finance team, doesn't know how to doesn't know about the existence of the whistleblower policy, nor does he know how to and whom to address a query or a concern, which of what kind. Now, these are some of the things which create an awkwardness, because on one hand, the executive management is giving the comfort to the audit committee that all these controls are in place and the policies are in place, but you are the one who's noticing that those policies are on paper and much needs to be done for those policies to actually be brought out. So next comes my most favorite, friendliness. And very often people ask me when I say I'm an internal auditor, and they say that, well, you're smiling. And it speaks a lot, because the typical impression of an internal auditor is somebody who works quietly, who works without smiling, who creates a separation between herself, himself, and the rest of the organization. I firmly believe that that is not how an internal auditor should be. I'll give a couple of examples here, and I would also acknowledge that, these are some of the things that I have learned. On one of our clients where we worked, and we had a long relationship with this client, and we were working on a floor, open floor. I always would have liked my team to work in an open area so that they observe the organization, its ethos, its culture, its communication, its interactions. Now, here there was a practice that every person of those departments who operated from that floor, whenever there was a birthday or a celebration, they would get a box of chocolates or a box of sweets and distribute it. And we were recipients of a lot of sweets and lot of calories in during those years. Now, one of the persons with whom I've had the privilege of working, namely Preeti Cherian, I think she would be possibly there. One day when I go, there was a chocolate again, and I said, okay, whose birthday? And Preeti looks at me and saying, today is my birthday, but I thought that as auditors, we should also bring chocolates because this is where we work from and this is where we operate from. Believe me, it created such a lasting impression that if we do these small things to reduce the distance between us and them, a lot of openness can be ensured. It allows us to be fair and it allows us to be frank if we combine it with having the right amount of friendliness. But this is something where a lot of care has to be taken. Drawing that fine line between being aloof and being intimate or personal, maintaining an open line of communication with appropriate sharing, alerts, advice. For example, I would say that I'm happy to be on LinkedIn with people with whom I professionally associate. But do I want to be with them on my Facebook? Or do I want to be able to share Instagram and Snapchats with them? Well, in these COVID times, a lot of these old-fashioned norms have got blurred, so I should not sit on judgment. But these are some things we need to take care of. Exercising empathy during audit, never mixing process with the person. It is possible for me to like a person and disagree with some of the practices that the person may have, because I should never mix these two things. Maintaining a positive approach, always identifying possible solutions, communicating improvements and enhanced controls. Whenever we start an audit discussion, these are the things that we observe where the unit that we are auditing has actually improved in its processes. This is where we find a stronger commitment to controls. This is where we find that we learned something. You have brought something which we have not seen outside. You are a pioneer in this area. However, these are also the controls which you need to tighten. I think the way we communicate also will create an approachability of a different kind. And the outcomes of friendliness is that the time that we spend on identifying the real pain points will get reduced because the auditee or the client will more readily share their pain points. It creates an opportunity for communication and conversations in between the audit cycles. It gives a chance to understand each other better, creates an atmosphere of trust, and also increase probability that our recommendations will be accepted. Now, well, I feel this is what I really believe, that, you know, short-term success in internal audit comes from quality and quantity of audit findings, because that is what will show your competence. It will show what really you are bringing to the table. But a long-term relationship will be sustained based on how many of your observations and your recommendations is the client or the organization paying heed to. What is the rate of acceptance? What is the rate of implementation? Because visible change to the auditee will come not from what you observe, but the change that you persuade them to make. So recently, the Supreme Court judge of US, RBG, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was all over the social media. A lot of people would have seen the wonderful movie which has been made on her life. She said one thing very nicely: fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Such a powerful statement, that if you really believe that controls have to be in certain ways, ethics have to be exercised in certain way, do it in a way that others will want to join, want to actually implement, rather than sit on opposite sides of the table all the time. So with this, there is, you know, I will also talk of one other experience, smaller experience. So I don't know whether Mr. Jyotin Mehta is here or not, but I consider a lot of people as my mentors, my gurus, from whom I have learned. Now, Jyotin Mehta joined, he agreed to be a mentor for our internal audit practice for a certain period. He came, he observed, he sat through some of our training meetings, and he understood that we are a fairly food-centric team. Having had our offices in Santa Cruz and Ville Parla, we are also a Gujarati-centric team, where a lot of our discussion and our disagreements dissolved over cups of masala chai. So in one of the Saturday open houses that we had, he came in and he said that, well, I have got jalebi and fafda for our entire team. Now look here, he was our mentor. He came from a position of seniority. He didn't need to try to belong. We held him in awe, but it was that date from which a lot of people saw him as a friend come mentor, and it made all the difference. So these are the lessons that we learn. We observe as internal auditors, and what we internalize is entirely up to us. And this is one poser which I would leave you with, that there is this person who's exercising and he is asking you a question, am I fat? You can respond in different ways. Yes, most definitely, you are obese beyond doubt. It is an absolutely correct statement. You are not fat, you are just short. You need to add 6 inches, then your weight will be appropriate for your height. This is diplomatic. It may be technically correct, but I don't know whether it is frank or fair. And the third way is, you are currently overweight, but with discipline and professional guidance, you can be in much better shape and get fit. And this is where I would like to leave a thought, that how do we say it? Very often in our excitement, you say that, yes, there has been a major control breach and you are beyond repair. So whenever we are keen and eager to say that, we should hold back. So please keep this picture in front of you and make sure that you say the right words in the right perspective. And with this, we move to the last of the 4 attributes, which I hold very dear, which I find that as internal auditors, we have a choice to be aggressive and noticeable, to be ruthless, and to sit and actually do character assassination when the time comes. We also have a choice of being gentle, being true to ourselves, being persuasive, and in our own gentle way, we can shake the world. So the finer things in life that leave a fragrance, that is what I call finesse. There are various ways in which finesse is explained and finesse is defined. I don't have a way, but this is something which I have learned. And this is where I would also like to share some personal stories. So as a very young professional, where I had not even chosen internal audit as an area of specialization, I was used to very dry kind of auditor, tax professional kind of writing. Most of our writing was stuck. It was fact-based, and it was to the point. So a lot of our letters started with, "Dear sir, I'm writing this for this purpose," and it ended, "and this section and this fact and this is the reason." Because as chartered accountants, we were not trained for finer writing, finer communication. I was privy to reading, and I don't think I have even shared it with Mr. Raneja in all these years, but I came across one internal proposal which was written by Aneja Associates, and I went through it and I held it like a piece of art, and I realized that this is the way in which you can write, where you create a bridge between you and your prospective auditee or your client, and you covered half the distance even before you are appointed as auditors. So I owe a lot of my finer writing and maybe also this presentation to what I have picked up along the way. There are 2 or 3 other people whom I would actually like to give credit to. So once again, in terms of, we have in Bombay Chartered Accountants Society a newly formed committee called the Internal Audit Committee. This committee comprises of a few people who are industry leaders, who are seniors, who are mentors, and who are there to actually provide guidance. We have conducted this one course called IA 101, which is a foundation course, and where we invite all these people as speakers, because the younger people need to listen to people who have spent 2 decades or more in various functions and some part of it in internal audit. Now, this is where I found that when we conducted the first session, we had called Mr. Mario Nazareth as our keynote speaker. Not only did he give the keynote speech, but he sat through bulk of the day listening to people on topics which were very foundational. And I feel that in this, I found that this is the finesse of a person who wants to encourage genuine effort of a newly formed committee. Similarly, a lot of the seniors who came there for those, people like Satish Shenoy, people like Jyotin, people like Ashutosh, people like Himanshu Vasa, they sat through, whenever they left, it was with a little bit of an apology that, Nandita, may we leave because we really need to go, wish we could have stayed longer. So these are the things which I have learned, that finesse is when you go beyond your call of duty, beyond your sense of responsibility, to create an atmosphere of goodness which cannot be defined in a few words. Delicacy, subtlety, diplomacy, polish, sometimes cleverness, sometimes tact. But I think that when I look at it, it is the finesse that we need to develop in the way we communicate. In the breadth of our understanding, in the quality of our conversations we take to the audit committee, the discipline of reaching an audit committee 15 minutes earlier, seeking that chance to have conversation beyond your presentation for those 10-15 minutes if possible, that is where you will gain much from people more experienced, but you will also help them understand where you have come in your professional journey. Spending time to prepare for meeting, giving finishing touches to report, and using eloquence while presenting. Thanks to Himanshu Vasa, I have sat with, we have had chance to work together in the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society platform. the ability that I have gained from him is even when it is drafting a notice, even when it is drafting a circular, to take care to use those words which are right, which are concise, and which are never hurtful or never capable of being misinterpreted. To be able to always say that when you use the word wrong, you are possibly talking of a person. When you use the word that there was an error, you are talking of an act. So never use the word wrong if you're actually meaning the word error. And these are some of the finer things which I have learned in my journey as internal auditors. Immense things I have learned also from my various students who came to me, to whom I always offered that cup of tea. They believed that I was teaching them something. Little did they know that all along I was learning to look at the world from the eyes of those who will matter in times to come much more than I will. So when we look at finesse, it is not a substitute for competence. It is something which is an add-on. It is something which will make competence shine through. It is the addition of salt to an otherwise very cooked meal. You know, all of us know that what that absence of salt can do to the meal that is so well cooked. So with this, I find that this picture perhaps captures what I mean by finesse. Through a synergy of intellect, artistry, and grace came into existence the blessing of not only a dancer, but also an internal auditor. So this perhaps is what I would like to leave with you, for all of you, for those who are here because perhaps because of their fondness for me, for those who are there because we have walked a long journey together, and for those who may be listening to me for the first time. I'm very grateful to IIA because it has given me a chance to reach out to a wider audience. I would request all of you to think and believe that all of us, all of you, will leave a legacy behind. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? Focus on it, not when you are 50, not when you are 60, but when you are 30, because legacy is made over decades. It is not something that you think of at the fag end of your career. This is something which I learned much later in my life. This is something which I would like to leave for all the younger members who would be there. Thank you so much. And with this, I would be very open to some questions and some sharing if somebody would like to share something. Thank you.
That was a very interesting and insightful talk, Nandita. I could relate to many things because, like, even my journey post qualification over 2 decades was like, with you, and learned all along a lot of things from you. This kind of inputs can come only from experience and won't find in any technical books. So it was a sheer pleasure to hear you.
Thank
So
you.
while Hetal is compiling on questions, friends, you can put questions if you have any in the chat box or Q&A box. I wanted to ask, couple of things. One is while most of us experience that kind of limited time we get in audit committees. How do one ensure and make most of these 4 Fs to get the sit at table, or now in current scenario we can say screen time, because it's in video conference mode. So how do one work towards that?
I think that the time availability with the audit committee or with the senior management is always a constraint, and that is why I feel that as internal auditors, how engaging is our conversation? How do we prioritize our conversation? How do we touch a chord so that we are invited either for a separate meeting or a longer time? Is the tact that we need to learn. I don't think any of us can master it. And even after much trying, there are still times when all that you have is 5 minutes. But sometimes in a nicer way, sometimes diplomatically, we do need to bring this out that the time spent on internal audit matters is been so much. So that also, but in today's era of the governance requirement, I think internal auditors are getting a little more time on the audit committee, particularly if they request saying that I have something which is of concern to share. At the same time, if there are times when internal audit reports do not have something which is which requires attention at that level, we should once in a while close in faster than the time allotted, because that is how also we earn. Because so that is one sharing that I would like to do.
Very true, very true. So, how do one balance between familiarity and friendliness without losing sight of audit perspective? And sometimes, like, one may appear more friendlier than what it should be, like, so that also kind of may cause concern in an organization.
I think that is a tough one. As I said, it's a tight rope. So I think that this is where the seniors in the team need to mentor, because people who actually work with the auditee are relatively not always do not have the same experience. So this is how, when we do our training, if we bring it like a game, then what would you do? If you are invited to attend a seminar on a topic of general interest, would you attend? If you are invited for a party at somebody's swimming pool, would you attend? So so I think when you do some kind of real life Q&A, it will create that kind of discerning judgment in our people as to where do you draw the line. I think also here people learn from what they observe. I think if at all in the COVID time there has been a largest loss, it is the inability of team members to learn from each other, to observe their seniors, to observe their clients, to observe different people. I always thought that internal audit, the largest privilege was because I got to see a variety of people, their operating style, what works, what doesn't work, what makes them leaders, what makes them taskmasters, where to draw that line. I think this is, according to me, a huge loss of COVID times, because when we look at screens and when we look at data, the ability to learn from others is something that we are losing out. So there will need to be more sessions on learning soft skills, because a lot of others can be done through pre-recorded sessions, and more open sessions, smaller, 20 people, where people can ask questions, answers. People can share that this is what happened at a client place. Should I have gone or should I not have gone? Should I have talked, not talked? So
true, very true. Thank you so much. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, we have one more question. Yeah, we have a question. How is fineness in professional life different from that in personal life? How do you distinguish between these two?
Come again?
How is fineness in professional life different from that in personal life?
So I don't think that finesse in personal life is different from professional life. I am very grateful to internal audit, because it didn't only make me a good professional, it made me a fine professional. There are few professions which give you an opportunity to evolve as an individual, to be mindful. What do we do as internal auditors? We objectively observe, and without judging through a prior bias, we examine and evaluate that action. What do we do when we go on an individual journey? We engage with mindfulness, we do meditation. Same thing, we observe ourselves in a kind, nice way, without judging, but we still evaluate, and we do act to improve from where we are. So I think it is intertwined. The finesse that is there in your personal life will flow into your professional life. But in internal audit, the finesse that you develop in your professional life will undoubtedly flow into your personal life. So I think that is
true.
Yeah. So
we have one more question. Do you think auditor who is more friendly with the client can be more skeptical at the same time?
So being skeptical is an attribute as important as being fair, frank, friendly, everything. So what happens is that auditors in their early stage of training, what I talk of is the first, if you take your career into three, the first stage of our career is where we pick up those skills and those attributes which are essential for us to conduct an audit. So professional skepticism is something which we develop and it becomes our second nature. So even today, I would say that even when I'm dealing with my building society, the skepticism is there. But when you are friendly, that skepticism comes with a certain openness. Skepticism doesn't get biased. It comes with an, I don't look at every person like a fraudster, but I also look at the actions and incentives with an idea that there are temptations there which need to be looked into, that whether somebody is succumbing and how do you make an organization temptation free. So being skeptical, having professional skepticism is a basic skill which we cannot compromise. And being friendly only means that at a certain level, we should appear approachable. What happens is that if at all in many organizations, a whistleblower complaint gets a certain kind of visibility and a regulatory path. But if the same openness, the person could have gone and spoken to the internal auditor, possibly it could be addressed at a slightly earlier stage or at a stage which is possibly less damaging to the organization as a whole. So for the internal auditor, for a lot of key senior people in the organization, it is very important to remain approachable and open rather than being closed and being aloof. That is how I would say. But yes, it is a fine line. It is somewhere where seniors need to observe, guide, and walk the talk.
Next is how to handle the tension between the engagement client team lead and audit team lead. This tension generally affects the process and the timeliness of the reporting. Basically, how do you manage between the two things where a client head is there and even your audit team head is there? The tension is always there between these two things to meet your expectations.
Yes. So I think one is the mistakes that we do. I will be very honest, we define timelines within which the client has to give us details. We never define timelines within which we will give responses, or we will issue a draft report, or we will close between draft to final. And if we do not get the feedback, so these are some of the things when we work with larger organizations, we have learned that the process is set in a way that the conflict is minimized. If everyone knows, see, it is like this, that if there is a school which runs to a timetable, there are periods. So you move from mathematics to PE to geography in a way because everybody knows that there is a time cycle to be observed. Now, if children did not have timetable and the teacher had to go and very suddenly at some point she had to say, come on, stop playing, we have to sit for a geography class, how many students will come into the class? So what I really feel is the timeline, if it is transparently defined and signed off. So sometimes the auditor will say that no, 2 days of response time is too little because we are fighting fires. So if I have to respond, work backwards, I will need 7 days of response time because I would like to consult, and we need to agree to that. So once we have agreed, we have a right to release a report or close a report even without a response, because that is where they have failed into their commitment. But this is what I feel, because sometimes we don't have the same rules for us as we have for them. We don't follow the same discipline, and we keep rules close to our heart. So if the rules are out on the table, everybody is playing the same game. And then it makes it easier for all of us to operate. But I think we need to invest in setting processes of execution and closures which reduce conflict. Unnecessary conflict in those.
I think there are more praises than the questions in this session. We have superb presentation, excellent presentation. There is
Thank you so
Trupti
much.
Mehta who has been conveying. I think she must have worked with you.
So
So whatever advice you have been given to her, she has taken up, and you know how she is. She's telling that you had told me that always say yes when a client offers tea or coffee, and there
yes,
will be
I would
opportunity.
like to share this, when they say friendliness, and I always told, I was very fond of tea. As you can see, my cup of tea is always with me. And I always wanted others to give me company in tea. So I would always tell them that, you will go, you'll become a senior, you will go to the client and he will offer you a cup of tea or coffee. And at that time, if you say no, you miss that opportunity of those 5 minutes, because the tea never comes in time. You get those 5 minutes, 10 minutes of extra time where you can talk a little beyond the main purpose of your meeting. So one thing, always have that cup of tea if you want to discuss, if you want the relationship to grow. And second is, whatever the tea is, you actually praise the tea, because then only next time he will offer you that cup of tea again. but these are trade secrets. So,
Which is
yeah,
out now.
yeah, which is out now.
True.
Also, I must say, and because I know that the participation is mixed, but I have been privileged to work with a lot of women in my practice. And when I look at the 4 F's, and that what I'm really talking, that I think this is the strength that the women in my team have been able to bring to a different level. So I would like to share that, I have had a mixed team. I have been very impressed. But in terms of factfulness, in terms of fierceness when it was required, even in terms of certain sharp findings, I have been happy with it. Has been a gender free. But when it comes to fairness, when it comes to finesse, when it comes to friendliness, I think I have gained when I have seen my women colleagues at work. I have seen a very different approach to work, which has enriched me. I am not biased. I think each gender brings a different quality to the internal audit profession, but each gender is very relevant for the uniqueness that they bring to the profession of internal audit. So for those of you who don't have enough women in your team, work from home, remote working is the time to broad-base and gender balance your teams. This is a message that I would really like to. I have been enriched by having a balanced team, and it has done me a lot of good. So the courage to use the kind of colors I've used in this presentation wouldn't have come if I had not worked with so many women, Nehal, Purvi, Trupti, Preeti, Aruna, Manisha, and so many. So,
Nandita Ben, there is a question for you from Mr. Satish Shinoy. He is asking what would be the outcome of Lehman Brothers if the firm name was Lehman Sisters?
So, yes, it's a very interesting question, and I will take this offline with Satish because he will have to give me a cup of tea for that. Thank you, Satish, for being present. I am really honored. So,
I think there are more praises. That was like a pleasure listening to you.
I have been very privileged because a lot of people, we were early starters in the internal audit outsource service provider space. And I didn't realize, but when I was preparing for this presentation, what I have seen, the number of people who have worked with us and as part of our internal audit team today hold leadership positions in their own organization, many of them in the GRC, governance, risk, compliance space. And I find it so I find it so satisfying that all of them somewhere relate to their foundational years with us when they talk of the kind of internal auditors that they have become. So this, if at all, at the end of the professional life, if I'm really grateful, it is for the impact that we together created on all of us together. I think that is something which has been very, very enriching. So.
there are no more questions except the praises from the audience. So rather than reading, I would like to thank Nandita Ben on behalf of IIA Bombay Chapter Women Circle for sparing precious time and giving us insight on 4Fs and how it is, how it is so effective and important in any internal auditor in today's life, whether he is at a junior level, whether he is at a mid level, or whether he is at a topmost partner level. How this is useful in conducting the audit, in not even in professional life, but I feel also it is important to know these apps in her or his personal life too. So thank you very much, Nadita Ben, for sparing such time. And there are some questions like whether you will be sharing the presentation with us. Yes, definitely. We will be sharing this presentation, and also this session we will be putting on to YouTube, so you will be able to see this whenever you have time. So thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I really thank Nehal, you, Hetal, Mehnaz for all the support that she has given, and all the participants who have come on, and many of them my seniors. I'm really honored by the presence of so many participants. Thank you so much. And as I say that it's always, people who come for a seminar always like a free period at the end. The child in us never dies. So ending before time is always nice on a seminar where people block time. So bye-bye, goodbye. Wish you all the best and wish the Women's Forum a very happening year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandaben. And we really hope this isn't your last lecture, and we will get many opportunities to hear you. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and sparing the time. Thanks everybody. Thanks
Thank you.
everybody for attending the seminar and being with us. Thanks.